I tell every patient, you are your own best healer. I'm not the healer, you are. And what I help to do is guide you and give you tools to really listen to yourself and to come back to, you.
Welcome to Roots of Healing, the podcast where we uncover the stories, insights, and visionary ideas shaping the future of lifestyle in integrative medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Siri Chand Khalsa. Before we begin, please take note that this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. The views expressed by our guests are their own and do not constitute medical advice. Always consult with your healthcare provider for personal medical concerns. Each week, I have the privilege of sitting down with trailblazers and thought leaders, and this week is no different. Join me in welcoming Dr. Michelle Thompson to the podcast. She is a beautiful mentor to many in the field of lifestyle medicine, and as you will hear through the podcast, she has so much wisdom to offer us. She is the clinical assistant professor of family medicine at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine, Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine, and Hermitage Community Medicine. And her background in family medicine makes her so well-suited to also be the medical director at UPMC Lifestyle Medicine Program. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited that you created this podcast to bring everyone together and further our field. I think there's so much work that can be done, and you're just a beautiful human to be launching this space. So thank you for having me.
Oh, that's so sweet. I got little goosebumps with that.
I mean it. I've been following your work for years as well. So, it's just nice to be here with you. It feels wonderful.
And it's interesting you say that. It is a deep desire of mine for more connection within these fields and for collaboration. I think we'll go farther when we're working together than when we are individually striving. And I do feel, I'm going to already start off on this tangent, I do feel that women can uniquely bring that, not that all people present in medicine can't, but women uniquely bring a desire to tend and befriend, to uplift and to bring, and I think that collaborative model hasn't been seen as prominently in medicine as maybe I would like, or at least I've experienced in my career. But that's a whole segue. Tell me a little bit about, we are close in age, I'm pretty sure. And I'm wondering, how on earth did you find yourself in this career path? We know that when we were training in the 90s and in undergrad in the early 90s, it was really not that popular. It was before social media. It was before we had a few thought leaders that kind of stood out, but there was not widely accepted in medical school environments. So tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, it's definitely one that showcases the bumps and rocks in the road, lead you to exactly where you are, which to me is a very beautiful place of which I live and work and breathe and get to participate every day of my life. So I went to Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine in 1996. And, during my course of medical school, I had to kind of go off the path and back onto the path. Okay. So, when I veered off the path of medical school, I started working at a massage therapy school, and I became the director of massage therapy. And that really helped in my integrative path, because during massage therapy, I learned about reflexology and Eastern medicine and reflexology and aromatherapy, sound therapy, art therapy, all the different integrative modalities, neuromuscular medicine. And then when I went back into osteopathic medicine, I had all of those pieces with me in osteopathy, which really is, getting to the root cause and trying to implement all of those things into osteopathic medicine. So when I graduated from my medical school and did my residency, I went to UPMC Mercy Hospital in Pittsburgh, and they allowed me to do integrative rotations. And so I had to seek that out. That wasn't, as you say, it was not common. So I found the people that I wanted to work with, and I was able to work with them and learn from them and really start to put all of that inside of me so that I could come out of my residency and take a traditional family medicine practice and make it integrative. Now, this was before the time of lifestyle medicine, right? So this was in 2006, and lifestyle medicine was a baby at that point, but integrative medicine was definitely, blooming somewhat. Back then we called it alternative and complementary medicine, right? And then, I'm very
And
much an
yeah.
Yes. And I'm very much an advocate for let's not use those words. Let's use integrative, because we're truly integrating it into traditional healthcare. We're not doing something, totally separate. We're integrating it in and using evidence-based medicine. And so I'm really big in making sure we're using evidence-based medicine so that we can uphold our credibility in the field. It's very important to me that what we're doing makes sense and is not hurting people and is truly helping people. So I became board certified in integrative medicine before I was board certified in lifestyle medicine. And, I was the black sheep of my hospital system. I mean, we have almost 100,000 employees, and I was the one that they would say, that's the integrative one over there. I had horns, or, I was a unicorn, and, I was different. But when the health system really started shifting and changing, it allowed me to be in a really unique position to launch lifestyle medicine at UPMC, as well as our lifestyle medicine residency curriculum. We have 8 family medicine residency programs that have lifestyle medicine.
Wow.
We have 2 internal medicine programs and physical medicine and rehab that allows our residents to learn lifestyle medicine. And when they're with me, by default, they learn integrative medicine and mind-body medicine, because you cannot unintegrate us, right? We are integrative. And that really is getting to the root cause of the problem, which so much can be lifestyle or mind-body at the base of it. So really coming back to, and I know we're going to talk about this, but Ayurveda and the self-care piece of, what do I need? I tell every patient, you are your own best healer. I'm not the healer, you are. And what I help to do is guide you and give you tools to really listen to yourself and to come back to, you.
That's so beautiful. And what strikes me immediately is this idea of just sort of blooming where we're planted, because here you were. I'd love to hear more, maybe offline, about the massage experience, because I actually took 4 years between med school and undergrad, and I went to study different modalities, and I didn't, I wasn't a director of a school or anything like that, but I was traveling to the naturopathic schools and to Santa Fe and to Europe. I was just, because I'd had this moment where in undergrad where I quit pre-med, and I was so happy. I was like,
right?
I know, I'm free. And then I remember, I was really struggling to integrate my degree a couple years after. And I finally just said, all right, I'm going to circle back. And maybe I'm curious if you felt the same way, because this would have been around the same time. I'll take what I know and be an agent of change. Was that a thought that kind of occurred to you when you integrated back into the educational pathway? It's a lot to carry, this understanding that healing can be so cozy, so dimensional, so deep, so rich, and to come into the sterility of which is appropriate in its own right, but this kind of disease treatment model where you have high blood pressure, we give you a medicine to reduce it. You have high sugars, we give you a medicine to reduce it. And here's a handout on diet and lifestyle. Thanks, bye-bye. That's what my early years in medicine were like. And I'm curious, did you struggle at all to want to come back in?
Yes. So when I was away, I kept thinking to myself, maybe I should just do something different. But I felt, as a massage therapist and neuromuscular therapist, I was actually trained in neuromuscular therapy at the time as well, that it wasn't enough for me. And so when I went back in a very changed way, that I didn't just look at, here's hypertension, here's a pill, here's diabetes, here's a pill. I was like, but why? but what is the root? And that's what I always tell my residents and my students who are with me. But why? Like, let's ask why and what's going on in this person's life that has them in this space. And so I'm so glad I went back in. Yet I will also tell you, once I was done, and at one point in my career, I was really sitting and looking at all of my diplomas and all of my things and going, what have I done? Because the healthcare system wasn't there yet. It really wasn't. And for so many people, I don't know who will be listening to this. All I can tell you is it's not 100% there yet, but it is all of us that will help it to shift. And so lifestyle medicine was I think the buy-in that allowed us to get that into the big hospital systems, because you cannot argue the pillars of lifestyle medicine: sleep, exercise, nutrition, stress management, substance use, connection with others. Those are the 6 basic pillars. But then when we start to look at stress management, okay, what do we do for stress management? Maybe we do yoga. Maybe we do a breathwork practice. Maybe we do Qigong, Tai Chi. Maybe we do mindful eating or aromatherapy, whatever that may be. So that really helps us to start to dig in, and a person needs to figure out, how do I manage my stress? How do I work on my nutrition? What brought me to my Ayurveda, which was in about 10 years ago, I was going through grief, and I lost my grandmother, who was a very integral part of my life. And when I came back to work after she passed, I just jumped right back in after I did all the things that needed to be done. And I realized I didn't grieve. And so I went away. I took time for myself in silence. And during that time, I had a consult by an Ayurvedic practitioner. And, when we were going through my life and how I was caring for myself, a big portion was stress and my work, and I had a perfect diet, whatever that is for me, but I was eating in a sympathetic nervous system. Right? I was just eating fast and eating at work in front of my computer, and not really mindful eating and taking time to come back and realizing, yes, I'm eating all this healthy food, but slow down. Go into the parasympathetic nervous system. Like, you cannot live being chased by a tiger your entire life. You cannot be out there caring for everyone else. You have to come back to yourself. And so in a healing field, right? This is what we do. We're teaching people to be healing themselves. We also have to remember to care for ourselves as these healers, right? Like, as our own best healer. So that was a very crucial part in my life, me checking myself. And so I'm very grateful for this field too, that, you are the expert in, way beyond me. And I very much look up to you. And I love that you're teaching other medical practitioners this work, because I think it helps them with burnout. It helps them with longevity. It helps them with, again, that self-awareness, that mind-body connection, and all the things we lose in medicine.
Right. And you bring up such a beautiful thread of how it's sort of like an erosion of what we knew about ourselves to be true, right? We start the process. And even recently, I was looking at a picture of like 14-year-old me, and man, I effing thought I was the bomb. I was an unusually confident 14-year-old for the 80s. And you can see how, as you are driven through these internal things that inherently keep the body in a stress state, perfection, achievement, recognition, because medicine is sort of this weird parsing of personal achievement because you can't get into it without that, and the healer's journey. And that juxtaposition, if people don't engage in that work, by the time you reach your 40s and 50s, that long-term sympathetic stress state starts to show up in weird, bizarre physical health problems that no one can figure out. And they erode your confidence in yourself as an integrative healer even. So I always say that the integrative, empathic, intuitive healers, who are often perhaps slightly neurodivergent, even in their own way. I don't use that term lightly, but like sensory processing a little different. They were sensitive to people, and they've been masking and covering up. And that sympathetic state means that a larger chunk than probably most realize are actually having a bit of a struggle that could be done easier if we were managing our stress better. And what
Mm.
better way? And so I love that you just sort of vulnerably shared that, is that even within this field, we can feel when people are carrying a lot of internal tension. And they may, I always say, you can go from the Autobahn to drive and still be the same driver. You can, it's still, you're still, you have to work on some of those thoughts. So it's so beautiful to hear you say, like, sometimes we have to pause and recenter ourselves into a self-value and figure out what it is that's turning that stress state on and off, and come into a much richer relationship, because I think it subtly affects digestion and sleep and immunity and, epigenetics in ways that we really haven't fully been able to get the medical system on board of. Is stress like smoking cigarette or drinking a six-pack? Probably. But
I think it's probably worse, to be honest with you, right?
yeah,
Because it's not talked about and it's not recognized as such. And I think we need to rewrite that. And so that's a large portion of the work that I do with my career right now is physician well-being, medical student well-being, nursing well-being, medical administrative well-being. How do we put self-care in the center of our healthcare system so that it's understood that we have to care for ourselves before we care for others, that we have to fill up our cup and we have to have a full cup before we're pouring out to the rest of the world. I think that's so important, and just rewriting that whole dialogue, it's going to take probably beyond my lifetime. But these conversations, I think, allow our medical students and our residents and, anybody that's in healthcare to say, oh yeah, I know. I hear them talking about it. It's shifting, and taking a hospital system that is almost 100,000 employees and turning it in that direction is no easy thing to do. It's a very heavy lift. But if you continue to have you use your words and you live in a way that's very authentic so that people see and you are, practicing what you preach, right? You are not just talking the talk, but you're walking the walk. I think that's how medicine changes. And then our patients see it and our friends and our families see it because they're all watching us, right? And so it's really important that we are true and authentic to ourselves and not just out here, saying these things and not taking the time, which for me, going in silence was so important for me because that's how I could block out all the other noise of, my husband and son knew where I was. Those were the two humans that could get me if they needed me. And they didn't. They left me be because they knew I needed it. Yeah, right. And when we're starting to think about how are we taking care of ourselves, really the answers are inside of us, but we have to quiet ourselves down to cut through the noise of the world so that we can come back to what do we really need. I'm sure just like I struggle with finding an integrative practitioner for myself, right? A physician who does what I do for me, right? So what do? These AirPods keep falling out. Hold on. Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Yeah. So I take 2 steps back and say, okay, how are you doing with your lifestyle pillars? Sleep, exercise, nutrition, stress management, substance use, connection with others. I wear my little Oura ring. How are you doing with your mind-body connection? Are you doing your breathwork practice? Are you, how are you doing? And your integrative tools. What is it you need in this moment? I go to sound therapy sessions. I go to my yoga mat. I'm on my yoga mat at least 6 days a week. I mean, that to me is like a non-negotiable. And nobody can get me in there. I'm not Dr. Michelle Thompson in there. I'm Michelle. And it's me and my mat. And that mat tells you a lot of what's going on in life, right?
That practice is
And
everything.
It is. And if you, and using some of the Ayurvedic practices too, just pausing and taking a mindful shower, or, lotioning, oiling your body, coming back to self, having love for this being. I mean, we get one being that we get the privilege to take care of. And so many times we're, oh, I wish I looked like this, or my hips are too big and I've got cellulite on my, all these things. We beat up this being instead of, can we just love ourselves? Can we put our hands on our heart and have some compassion, some kindness for ourselves? Like, can we truly look in the mirror and say, I love you. I love you first before I exit and do all the things I need to do with the rest of my day for all the other people that want me. Right.
Right. It's so incredible to hear you articulate that so well. It's clear to me that you mentor younger clinicians because you've got a really beautiful way of explaining the potency of self-love. And again, I love referencing the 80s and 90s because why not? But I grew up very standard American, suburban Washington, D.C., watching Oprah, MTV, eating Lipton's cup of soup. Chicken noodle. I am as it gets, suburban kind of upbringing. And I can remember that my earliest conceptions of self-care were sort of mingled with prestige and wealth, meaning like it came from Vogue or Cosmo. We didn't have social media. So where were we getting notions of self-care? It was like girls' day at the spa in the south of France. And I'd be like, if only I could. That's where you do self-care, in the south of France with your gorgeous, glamorous friends. And somehow, through that, you just get kind of hardwired to be like, push through. It'll be okay. There'll be some point in the future when you can. I used to say, I'll sleep when I'm dead, or I'll rest when I'm dead. And
right.
I don't know that people say that anymore, but I feel like this pause and presence with self, and the honoring of this form, and saying, hi, form, I have a body. Today we're in a connection. What are you telling me today, body? Are you telling me you're tired? Your stress is high. Your digestion is pretty off because, you were traveling in New York and you had croissant, even if it was
right.
vegan puff pastries, but I'm not that rigid. If there's a really good croissant in front of me, I'm going to have it. So,
and you should, because that's intuitive eating, right? And that's like not being that's an excellent point. People get so scared of food, then that puts them in the sympathetic nervous system, right? So I always say that if you're in Austria, have the cheese croissant, or if you're in Italy, eat the cannoli. You just can't do it every day,
Yeah, exactly. And I think people have really vast ideas around what is nourishment. I would love to hear if you had a patient sitting in front of you who maybe was like me as a teenager. She's coming in her mid-20s without the social media background. How would you describe to someone, what does it mean if they come in and they say to you, I want to learn how to nourish myself. I want to learn how to love myself. Well, I'm sure I know you have said this many times, but tell us what you might say to someone sitting in front of you.
Well, my standard when I meet a new patient is I essentially say to them, I talk to them about mind, body medicine, lifestyle medicine, integrative medicine. And I say, the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine are sleep, exercise, nutrition, stress management, substance use, connection with others. How do you do caring for yourself? Walk me through a day in your life. Like, tell me, how do you, do you have a meditative practice? Do you have a kindness, self-love practice? Do you take time mindfully brushing your teeth, mindfully eating in the shower? What do you do to move your body, and honor yourself? And, those are the kind of things that I ask them. And usually I will pause and then just listen. And I think that that's one of my best gifts, is listening, because I think, and teaching, right? So my students and residents, they actually are always amazed that when we when we start with that line, what's going really well and what are you struggling with? Because that's the other thing in my follow-ups, like what's going really well and what are you struggling with? How can I help you over the hurdles? And how do I help you get out of your own way, right? We always get to the root cause of the problem. So it's not like we're saying, oh, your review system's headache, digestive issues. It all comes out in the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine and in your self-care. So, I mean, I think that is important, is having this dialogue. And to be honest, our youth are much better at this than you and I were. I mean, we didn't honor that. I mean, medical school residency beat the heck out of us. I'm preparing for a presentation for this weekend on physician well-being for Pennsylvania Osteopathic Medical Association. And this is one of the big things I talk about. You know, we were traumatized by our medical school and our training and our residency. We didn't sleep when we needed to sleep. We didn't eat when we needed to eat. We didn't go to the bathroom when we needed to go to the bathroom. Some people used too many substances. Some people had poor connection. They didn't see their family. Residency is called that because we are taking residence in the hospital. We live in the hospital for, 3 to 5 years, however long you're training. So I think, us as actually physicians, it's really important that we come back to ourselves and model that for others. And I want to share one thing because you brought up something. I viewed massage very similar to that spa type thing and I grew up very poor, lived in the projects, ate pot pies. So similar to what you were talking about. And during COVID, I was going and getting massage once every couple of weeks. And I remember saying to my therapist, like how guilty I felt. Now, I've had the same therapist since my grandma passed because I felt like it was a wise choice for me to have a therapist. And then going through COVID as frontline family medicine, I was chair of medicine and then vice chief of staff of 3 hospitals. Good thing I had a therapist. But the therapist said to me, Michelle, you're an integrative medicine physician. How do you not see that massage therapy is an important tool for you? And I was like, but it seems so like spa-like. It seems so like, and then it hit me. It was the only hour in that week or two that somebody was caring for me. I was constantly pouring out into the world and I was not letting somebody else fill me back up. And after I looked at it that way, I was like, I deserve that, right? As many people as I care for, and patients and medical students and residents and attendings and nurses, the entire staff, I don't deserve an hour a couple of times a month. At that point, COVID, I don't go that much now, but during COVID, I mean, it was the only time people couldn't get me. It was like I was, so I think it's really important that we have those conversations. Like, what is it that this human needs for her self-care? And in that moment, that reconnected my mind, body, and my massage therapist, who's been with me through many years. She's able to move me from sympathetic into parasympathetic in a way like none other. And so I think sometimes we need that. Like we need sound therapy, or we need aromatherapy, or we need an herb, right? I mean, I have my herbal teas and, different, tinctures that we can use. And there's so many things that are in our integrative toolbox that are evidence-based, but it's up to us to decide what we need in that moment.
It's so true. And it's funny how you said that, because when you were talking about it, I thought, and it must be that you've gotten there, I thought that you were saying, which I thought was so cool, that your somatic therapist was on level playing ground as your psychological therapist, meaning like mind and spirit and body were all getting therapy in the way that was needed and essential. And I love this framing of it that way, that we say massage therapists, but we don't actually make that leveling up to it is as valuable as psychological therapy. And I was just checking the author's name. It's Bessel van der Kolk. The body keeps the body keeps the score. And this idea that this polyvagal theories and this myofascial system is intense, I don't understand all the theoretics of it, but I get the gist, which is that the body is holding emotional states and stress. And if we're only like above the head, above the neck, thinking we solve our problems just through cognitive-based reasoning, which is very, very valuable. I have been in therapy better part of my whole life. Couldn't be the person I am without it. But it wasn't until I began to truly understand what was being held in the body to be integrated into my therapeutic. So I get pretty regular craniosacral massage, acupuncture, energetic modalities, a whole bevy of things within Ayurveda that are essential to maintaining, because like you, in my own way, I pour into community as well. And there has to be ways that I honor this form. Otherwise I get burnout. And then for me, I don't ever get mentally burnout. I don't know what's going on up there, but like mental burnout, but I get physical burnout. I get the strangest array of physical problems. And I don't know if that's like my WASP upbringing is like, but I can always tell when my stress levels are super high because I've stopped digesting food. I've stopped sleeping. I've got hives. I have neuropathy. I've got burning sensations, every high pitta. Like it's like pitta is all over my whole body. And I'll turn to my husband and I'll be like, well, pitta is high, stress is pitta type stress is high. My apologies if I'm sharp, angry, or mean, because that's how my stress comes through in my form, through the doshas for me. So it's so interesting to think about how powerfully we still segregate in medicine the body as a form of intelligence, as an informant to the path to healing. And I love how your background really makes that so integral to your conversations. And I do want to just circle back. Remind me the 3 things you say. Walk me through a day, what's working and what's not working.
What's going really well for you and what are you struggling with? Let me help you over the hurdles.
Yeah.
Like how can I help you to get out of your own way, right? Because I think the big thing is we all know what we need to do, right? We know when you wake up in the day, you say, oh, I know I need to do all these things. How do you do them all? I mean, life is hard. It's busy. We can't do all the things. I mean, I always say, like, if we do all the things, we'll never leave our house. We won't even get to work. I do all my face care stuff and my mouth care stuff and my body care stuff. And then I need to mindfully eat and chew my food 32 times, right? Like all these things, like I'm never going to get anywhere.
I hear you. And I think sometimes too, the Ayurvedic daily routine is called dinacharya, for those of you that are not as familiar with some of this terminology or concepts that we're using. And the dinacharya is basically a system of tuning up the body and tending to the body on the regular. It's usually I always like to say it's like if you look at a receiver that's got gradations of high and low in terms of its sound. Some days the frequency is high. We're really invested. We really need to do a lot of self-care. And other days we're like, I have to coast today. That means 5 minutes max, but I know I can trust myself that I'll always come back to it. And the body is always going to be signaling to me how I'm showing up in that way. And if you're listening and then you have a facilitator or someone who's creating an awareness, people have a remarkable ability to recalibrate and heal. And we're not saying that this is what heals cancer, by no means. And I know that's not what you're saying, but I don't want what we're saying to be misinterpreted. But there are a lot of other factors that are happening, say, when someone has a pretty life-limiting disease like cancer or autoimmunity, where we might be looking at the progression of the disease or reoccurrence or the full expression. You could have 3 people in front of you who all have rheumatoid arthritis and vastly, vastly, vastly different expressions of the disease. And in medicine, still we have all those 3 people in the exact same box, A, B, and C. But if you ask the questions you ask, we might see person A is in a toxic home, meaning it's filled with chemicals that their body is challenged to remove. Person B has an a score of 10. They grew up in a very debilitated environment where there was physical and or sexual abuse. And person 3 had a toxic boss who sexually assaulted them at work one day and no one ever spoke of it again. But they carried the stress and the burden. I mean, the thing is we never really think about the person that has the disease. The ulcer quotes, always get me, but we think more about the disease that the person has. And I think your model, and it's not just you, but like the way you phrase it, I've never heard anyone phrase it quite like that, gives someone the opportunity to verbalize, because oftentimes they're holding that close to their chest. Maybe I need to tell them this thing. But then we're zooming through the visit and we're talking about all the things lifestyle wise would be great for them, right? But we haven't actually given a space of listening.
And I think that's imperative, I mean, so many people cry when they come to me and I just say, it's okay. Tears are welcome here. I honor all emotions, even anger and frustration and bitterness and disappointment. Like, let it move through you, because as you said, the body keeps the score. And we have to be able to allow people the space to talk about what's important to them, because if we look at these diseases, whatever it may be, but why? If you ask yourself, but why rheumatoid arthritis? But why cancer? Even if we have a disease, we can have some sort of control within the space. So that's where the breathwork practice can be really important. We teach mind-body skills groups in our hospital. So I'm certified in mind-body medicine. And the one thing that I've found that mind-body medicine does is it gives people their power back, especially in the healthcare system, because so many people feel dictated to. Like, you have to do this. Here's hypertension, you have to take a pill. Here's diabetes, you have to take this. Here, you have cancer, you have to do this. But really, you have a choice in your healthcare of how you want to manage it. And I believe we have to do traditional, but we can integrate all these other things in so you feel control, that you're in the driver's seat of this. None of us are here to just let somebody else take the reins. If you are, that's not going to work. And I think the physicians that practice this way, that put the onus back on the patient, feel happier overall as well, because they don't feel like it's their fault that they're doing something wrong. Because the reality is we're all doing our best, and our best is good enough, and our best is going to change from day to day, like the 4 agreements, right? Like, it's going to change. We're going to have good days. You're going to have, imbalances. But again, who best knows the imbalance but you? And so, a big part of the work that I did during COVID in physician well-being was, can we check ourselves? I had an alarm on my phone every hour on the hour. What does Michelle need right now? And I did a breathwork practice with 100% of every patient that came in front of me. I started with a breathwork practice so that we could center ourselves and focus. And I may have been running an hour behind, but they thanked me. And I did it just as much for me as I did for them, because what was COVID? It was a pandemic. It was a global trauma. Everyone was in the sympathetic nervous system, right? Because we had uncertainty and fear of what's happening. And, especially those of us, I felt like it was so much harder than residency because nobody had any answers. And I kept going, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Today they're saying this, but I think the big thing for me during COVID is coming back to myself, like moving myself back into the parasympathetic nervous system as much as I could, because we were in such an uncertain time in our world. So again, I think that's a big portion of what we do best, is help people to know what they need and to love themselves so that they can take good care of themselves. I say we get one life. I don't get a trophy in the end for taking care of you. You do. You get a happier life, a healthier life. So let me help you. We're really just a team trying to get to the end goal of living beautifully and aging gracefully in such a stressful world.
Yeah, it couldn't be more stressful in so
Right.
many ways. Um, One thing I want to circle back to in what you said, which is, I think I always use the analogy. It's like you could be driving in the Autobahn or driving on I-95. You're still driving the car, meaning you can go from a traditional practice to an integrative or lifestyle practice. And I've been helping recently a lot of clinicians with their business development because I had a lot of complications from COVID that really prohibited me from practicing easily. And so I have had to pivot quite a bit in my career, very unexpectedly. Never, ever imagined I'd be where I am today. But one thing that I recognize is that if we are wanting to shift up our practice style, we have to do the inner work to understand
Mm,
that the model most of us grew up in, if you will, for lack of a better way of explaining it, really sort of has this unusual paternal quality to it. Like we know best. And if a mistake is made, it's totally on us. And if someone isn't
mm,
better, it's on us. And when you really get deeper into healing, it is radically in the realm of the individual to
mhm,
seek out their own inner terrain. And some people have not been resourced enough to even have any sort of framework of how to think about that. And I think that was sort of the rise of the internet hashtag takeover of integrative medicine, as I like to say, that along came a group of people who maybe didn't have quite as much training or perspective and said, let me tell you how to get better because no one else is. And put that power back into the individual. And now we're in this very strange period where we're looking at very little trust of the clinicians unless it's someone like you or myself or others who are just very, very present and very empowering. But there's a lot of distrust because the medical system has been so reluctant to acknowledge that we are very inefficient at helping people get better.
mhm.
And I'm curious, where do you see those trends going in that you're more on the administrative side and on the physician education side? Do you think that initiatives are coming that will really, because time is the big X factor. And I want to talk to you about group visits because to me, that's the secret sauce. But
Mhm.
what do you think? What do you think about that kind of evolution on the administrative side and in the educational side of clinicians?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a full-time family medicine practice still. I'm in the midst of attempting to shift over into integrative lifestyle, mind body medicine completely, just because I'm only one human and I'm having a hard time keeping all the balls in the air. But I think that the shift is happening because we now have an integrative medicine flex week in our medical school, which is fantastic. One of our medical students reached out to me and said, can we put this curriculum into place? I reached out to you, remember, to see about whether you were able to teach them. So they're getting this in medical school. They're seeing this, and they are the ones who will make the change, because I think from an early on time, the medical students and the residents are really feeling not just all the societal pressures, but the pressures in healthcare, and they want a different way. And so I really do think that it's just a matter of time. Those of us who teach, please keep teaching. Those who don't, please teach, because these learners need to see what a practice could look like. And that's why when I really think about what is my best gift to the world, it's education and getting it out there. I took a traditional practice and turned it into an integrative practice. I have two physician assistants who are by my side. They're both lifestyle, integrative, and mind body. They utilize it. They're like little miniature versions of me, just 20 years younger. And the patients love them. And, you know, I, now that I'm shifting, am not even feeling sad to shift, like I'm abandoning the world. I don't feel like that because I've trained so many people that can carry it on. Yes, I'm still going to have these wild synapses of things that I pick out that other people aren't going to pick out of, right? Like there's sometimes I surprise my own self. I'm like, how did I just guess that? Like
You're
most of the
like,
time it's
tapped
trauma.
in.
There's
Yeah.
so much trauma that is like underlying that I see that I just like, you just get that intuition. You're like, yeah, something's
I
deeper.
always used to say if like something wasn't computing, it was either trauma or substance abuse that was
Mm-hmm.
masked. Because usually, if you're very present with people, the story will make sense.
It
But
does.
every time I would be with someone and the story didn't make sense, I'd be like, there's either pretty significant trauma that the person is not like in connection to, or there's
Right.
substance abuse that is highly masked, or it could even be like addictions of various kinds that are not classically thought of as addiction, but inevitably the story would come out within a number of visits, and you've been in enough conversations, eventually you recognize, oh, this is that familiar feeling. Something here is telling me a story that's not consistent with the story they're telling themselves. As you know
And sometimes they just don't know. I mean, I had one 2 weeks ago and she said she'd never had any trauma. And then I said something to her about journaling and she said, oh, I can't do that. It triggers my trauma. And I was like, you just said you didn't have trauma. And now she's like having this understanding. And I think that's another big piece. Trauma informed care is mandatory. And so many clinicians are further traumatizing the patients. And that makes me so sad. So, a person may not want to talk about something yet. And you just have to say, when you're ready, I'm here.
I always used to say it was sort of like a mango on a tree. Like at the beginning, you see the mango, there's evidence of it, but there's no flavor, there's no expansion. It's just this hard nut on the tree, and then let it blossom, let the fruit come to its fullness so that you can, it's a weird analogy, but that you can bring it in to incorporate it and understand it and relate to it, versus when it's in this sort of unflowered, unblossomed version of itself. And that timing can be decades. You've probably had some
Mhm.
patients who I had a, without being, HIPAA kind of things, but I had a patient who I saw for a very long time who had persistent, let's just say, tendonitis. And we were at PT and we had surgery and we had different modalities, and we even tried integrative, curcumin, and we tried acupuncture. We tried all the things. And several years into that process, I used to, I had another conversation on the podcast, and we used to, we joked, we say the last visit before lunch, meaning it was your visit, you could take the time. Now we all know we shouldn't be going into our lunch, but for those of us that work in the insurance models, that there's this grind of patience and time. Sometimes your last patient or your patient before lunch, last one of the day, were the ones you knew you could take a little bit more time with to let the story blossom, which is always part of that dilemma, is just the timing piece. And it turned out that there had been very significant childhood abuse, and that individual had never told a soul what had happened. And this individual was decades into life, like, elderly person. So it's so valuable. But then, and I would be curious to hear what you think, we uncover it as the primary care doctor, as the one really right there with the patient. And then sometimes the resources to support them through that healing are so limited in terms of finding trauma-informed ABCDEF. And I never hesitated to help people uncover that or find it, but I always was like,
Now what?
now what? How are we going to support you now that we have unearthed and brought this to light? And I'm sure you have found your own, I don't want to say struggles, but you've had to work hard to support people to do that healing work, because it's not, as you wisely remind us, it's not common.
Well, and that's where the group medical visits have been crucial, because if I can get these patients into mind body skills groups, that gives me 2 hours to spend with them in a week, right? Once a week for, however many weeks we have our mind body skills group. And then continuously, because we have once a month drop-ins for the people that have finished a group so that they can continue to dive deeper. That's what mind body medicine is, really, is figuring out how, what's gone on. I mean, that has been so crucial in my own journey in life. And, I think you said it, I've had patients who are like 85 that just make a change. And I'm like, wow, like, why now? Like, you're 85. But I think the one thing I learned is that it's never too late to make a change. And when it's too late, you have nothing to worry about because you're no longer here, right, on this earth. So as long as we have our breath, we have the ability to make a change. I love the books called What Happened to You that Oprah Winfrey wrote, and then also Childhood Disrupted, because that helps us to dig into some of these childhood traumas that we don't even really realize that we've been traumatized. I think so many times people think trauma is, a car accident, as opposed to divorce when you were growing up, or your parents were incarcerated, or financial, problems, or neglect, or, emotional abuse. Those are all traumas. And I think just having that awareness and then starting to work through with these tools, the mind body skills groups, and the group setting for us is huge at UPMC. The other piece is having a trauma informed therapist, which I definitely have a team that I work with that I love. And, I think all humans should have counselors. I think it's important, right, to have somebody to talk to. Yeah. And a place to reconnect, which again, I'm so happy you're doing these podcasts, because I think it gives you the opportunity to connect with other like-minded practitioners around the world and then share this wisdom. I mean, my website really isn't for making money. My website, Wholehearted Medicine, is to put all the podcasts that I've done on there, and to have meditations for patients to go on and do a breathwork practice. Just click on there and just, do soft belly breathing, or autogenic training, or dancing mindfulness, or mindful eating, whatever you choose. But that's why the website is there, because it just gives me a place to put things. So thank you for allowing me to come on here so that we can have these conversations, because this will help patients, and it will help practitioners who want to practice this way know that it is possible, because if you build it, they will come. I mean, I have the most beautiful patient population, and what a gift they have all been to me.
Yeah.
To be part of their lives. And it's because I created space to allow them to come in and be honest about their herbs and their supplements and their story. And I listened, and I didn't sit up here and talk down to them. I sat with them. I held their hand. I cried with them. I prayed with them, like whatever, like I gave them the space that they needed. And we can all do that as practitioners.
I think it's that humanistic, wholehearted, as Brene Brown's work, like bringing your whole heart into the work and not being hardened by it. But the only way to accomplish that is to normalize the journey that is involving us as well. It can't always be at an arm's distance. I'm curious, when you're saying mind body work, did you do your training with James Gordon, or?
I did.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about that. A lot of people may not know. I did the intro to course in Tulane in like 2007, I think. It's been a while.
I'm very blessed to have trained with James Gordon. So I did my food as medicine for women's health at Esalen back in 2017, I think. And then I did Mind, Mood, and Food at Kripalu with the team, with Aviva Ram and Cindy Geyer and Drew Ramsey and Jim Gordon and Mark Hyman, and who else was there? I mean, just a great groups of humans. And then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, all the work had been in person, and Dr. James Gordon decided to open a mind body skills group for healthcare providers. And I threw my name in the hat, and not knowing how I was on earth, I was going to show up for 2 hours a week being frontline family medicine and all the things. And I got to be in his group. And then I was inspired to take the professional training program and then the advanced training program. And I was never going to run a group. I kept saying, I'm never going to run a group. And I'm only just doing this. I don't know why, but I'm just doing this. And ultimately, I became certified in the work. I had a mentee who wanted to get certified. And I said, well, listen, I don't have the bandwidth to do all the back end things. So if you want to do it, let's do it together. So Dr. Sarah Sierra and I got certified together, and I launched group medical visits and mind body skills groups at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, which we were really the first hospital system that was running group medical visits for any diagnosis. Out in California, they are running them for cancer patients, and I'm running them for anything. So whether it be grief or loneliness or social isolation or depression, anxiety, insomnia, give me a diagnosis and they're probably benefiting from a mind body skills group. And so, I just, again, didn't know why I kept doing this work. My husband's like, what are you doing? You're already board certified in lifestyle medicine, integrative medicine, family medicine. What are you doing?
Learners.
I'm like, I don't know. But I kept learning more and more about myself and my own childhood trauma. And, I come from a very broken family. I speak very openly about the drugs and alcohol in my family. And my stepmom died of a drug overdose during 2020. And just a lot of poverty and, just tough background, right? But it gave me all the tools I needed to know myself better. And when I run a group, I always tell them, I'm here to participate with you. I'm here to be human with you. Like, thank you for allowing me to be human with you. I love it. It's the best ever for me to be able to show up and hold the space, facilitate, but then really be with the people. And so, I did this work during COVID with healthcare providers at UPMC and beyond, which landed me in the New York Times, which was amazing. I didn't ever expect me, the poor girl who grew up in the projects, to be in the New York Times one day. Never did I say, I'm going to be in the New York Times when I grow up, So that was all thanks to Dr. James Gordon and the work that he and the center have done. And they've supported me immensely. And talk about the most mindful humans in the world. To be with them is to just know you want more out of life and that you can have more out of life and that we are that ripple. And so when we are that vessel to allow the work to move through us and out into our medical students and residents and attendings and humans, our families, all of it, it just makes the world a better place. So, much love to the, Center for Mind Body Medicine. And I'm glad Jim and his work and the team.
Yeah, I think I went to, I finished residency in 2005. I took the break. And then I went to the Food as Medicine conferences that they used to have, just, and then I did the training, and it was just a place because even in 2005, there was still so little. I was never really the person who wanted to run my own practice. And so there was so little opportunities for me to work.
Mm-hmm.
I had fully vested in integrative principles by the time I was done with residency. I was ready to have this integrative model. And his center really just helped keep me sane and anchored into medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I do think I probably would have finally just said, okay, fine, I'm done. Chapter is complete. This is not a healing model that resonates with me.
Yes.
And I'm glad ultimately that I did stick with it for another 20 years or, plus minus, because there was learning in that for me and, informing me about this phase of life that I'm in now. And I can't say enough about what I think the value of group visits bring. Are you, just because I know I answer this question for people a lot, but I'd love for you to affirm it. Are you all billing insurance for the group visits?
Yes. Yes, we have billable diagnosis. So we bill a standard medical visit, and they all get to participate and do a one-on-one within the visit and have access to a private one-on-one if they need that. But generally speaking, everybody just talks within the visit. And that's where the work is done, is in that group. And that's where the learning is done. And it's a beautiful space that again, I never thought that I would be running groups, particularly in mind body medicine, but they're my favorite to run because they force you to move into the parasympathetic nervous system. You are not, being chased by a tiger in that space. You are landing with the people. And I think the other big important part of that is that anybody who wants to run group medical visits, that's an excellent platform to go learn, professional training program or advanced training program, because it teaches you to hold the space in a very mindful way. We open with a breathwork practice. We close with the breathwork practice. We teach a skill, but all of my groups, the hypertension, menopause groups, diabetes groups, insomnia groups, any group I run is run like a mind body medicine group. So the base is mind body medicine of all of
That's
my
incredible.
groups,
I think
because I think that's important.
it is. And I always tell people there's a lot of redundancy in some ways around the lifestyle pillars and education, even though it's unique for each person. And I think the synergy of the group, because I've sort of been doing groups for physicians, like abstractly off the record, because we're not doing medicine, but a little bit we are. I've seen the power of the group as a transforming agent, that the group becomes medicine. And it's such an intangible part that until people do it, and I think you raise such an important point that a lot of people are intimidated. I don't know how to hold space or create a container for transformation. I'm completely intimidated by it, but it's a learnable skill. And I want to reinforce what you said, which is there are Jeff Geller's work or James Gordon's work. There are pathways, and I'm sure you're mentoring people and other people are doing that. And I think the group visit, especially with AI, we have barely seen what AI is actually going to do to medicine. Like 5 years from now, we may listen to this podcast and be like, oh yeah, we had no idea. But the human connection piece of healing is intangible, and the trust of the clinician and the faith to do the day-to-day things that AI would never be able to do for us. So diagnostically, clinically, it may step in and be very sophisticated and even be able to hold whole person healing system models for people, like an Ayurvedic consult or a TCM consult, like conceptually, with if it's listening to our intake and our questions, give us a pitta predominant XYZ with botanicals and marma points and pranayamas and all the things. But I do think that it's so magical to hear you just fully embodying this practice of wholehearted medicine and the presence you've been to each and every visit. And I'm really touched by our conversation, and I'm so grateful. We could probably go for quite a while longer, but we're sticking to roughly an hour for the podcast. So if you could tell people how they can find you online. And I know probably a more important question is, are you taking new patients? Can someone come see you? Probably not. I imagine your panel's pretty full.
That's a challenging one. I mean, I have a website, wholeheartedmedicine.org. So if you want to be a patient, certainly reach out to me on that website, or Dr. Michelle Thompson on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. My Instagram is like a blend of work and my family. That's MT Yogi Doc. And I do believe that me sharing my family with the world is important, because I'm showing up as a human. I'm not showing up as, a doctor that's untouchable. I am reachable. I mean, most of the mentees, people that have worked with me, they've just reached out and said, can I come work with you and learn from you? And yes, the answer is yes. Always. I mean, I'm virtual the majority of the work I do, so people can come in and they can learn. Attendings come and work with me from all over the United States, really, so that they can see how they can, launch a menopause group or launch a mind body skills group or whatever it is. I mean, I believe that I'm here to share and pay this forward into the world of medicine. People have taught me, so I want to keep teaching. And so that I have somebody to care for me sometimes when I need something.
Yeah, exactly. I think about that often. I didn't have kids, so I'm like doubling down. Like, okay, who Please let there
Yeah.
be people that, if I was ever less active or healthy than I am now, which is hopefully a distant thing, but having been so sick with COVID, it's brought it, so much
Front
more
and
to my.
center. I mean, we're all humans, right? I mean, we're all going to break down. I think that's so important for us to really, make that point, drive that home. Like, we're all going to have problems in our lifetime. And so, I will share, my son actually is 33 years old, and he is probably one of the people that will, call me out if I need called out on something. And it's because I taught him well. I feel like, he'll say, "Mom, breathe." I'm like, "Yes. Okay, I'll breathe." But thankfully he knows to say that, "Mom, are you exercising? Mom, are you taking care of yourself?" I mean, I love that my son knows that self-care is not selfish and that self-care is important, and that I taught him that. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the best thing I could have ever taught him
Aw.
I think going forward, my family didn't teach me that, by the way. I don't know if your family did, but
No, no, no,
no,
no.
they didn't teach me that. So, I mean, I think that every breath we have the ability to begin again, and the ability to tap in and connect with ourselves and see what we need. And so, can I breathe with you? Can we
Yeah.
just take a few? Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
So if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, go ahead and do that. If you're driving your car and you're with us, do not close your eyes, but just start to come into your breath, noticing as it moves in through your nose and out past your lips. Maybe not thinking about all the things that have already happened in your day, and not thinking about all that you need to do when you're done here, but be right here, right now, knowing that as long as you're breathing, there's more right with you than wrong with you. Maybe placing both hands on your heart, and as you breathing in some kindness and compassion and love and gratitude and care for yourself. And maybe as you breathe out, you soften just a little further, and maybe reminding yourself, I deserve to be comfortable. I deserve to relax, and I deserve to care for me. Continuing to breathe in through your nose and out past your lips, or out through your nose, whatever feels right for you. What do you need in this moment? Can you check in? Can you really notice your hands, your feet, your body, your breath as it nourishes you? Can you really just notice? As long as you have your breath, you're safe and you're well. And again, you have the ability to make a change and to put yourself first. And knowing that caring for ourselves is caring for others, and that self-care is not selfish. And one last very deep mindful breath, making it the most mindful breath you've ever taken in your entire life, really feeling all that air as it moves all the way to the top of your head, and as you let it out, all the way to the bottom of your feet. And then opening your eyes if they're closed, and coming back to the screen and to this moment. Thank you.
Just what I needed. We have a beautiful connection, and I'm so delighted we had this time set aside for us to get to know each other better. And thank you so much for joining us. And all of Dr. Thomas's reference points will be in our show notes. Please find her and connect with her and be mentored by her. What a blessing you are to both clinicians and patients. And thank you for being you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being you. You share such a beautiful gift with our world, and I'm grateful to know you. Thank you.